Greetings, my name is Gary Mizell, G-A-R-Y-M-I-Z-E-L. I'm talking to you from the United States of America. I feel like that is enough of a zeroing in of the location where I'm talking to you from, because what we're talking about is really the entire universe. So if you're at a universal level, saying that you're from the United States is more appropriate than anything smaller than that. I would like to begin by talking about where my father's family came from. The original name was Mizelovsky, M-I-Z-E-L-L-O-V-S-K-Y. We owned a grain mill in Minsk, which is the capital of Belarus. So that's a country now that is controlled by Lukashenko, and Lukashenko serves Vladimir Putin. So nothing has really changed too much in the region of the world where my family came from. My great-grandparents died in prison. They're the ones that established our grain mill. We were milling wheat, and we were making bread and matzah and serving Jews and Muslims and probably Christians. My family was Jewish, and we were being controlled by Tsar Nicholas II. Now, I don't know exactly what year Tsar Nicholas II left Russia and moved to Siberia. I do know that Tsar Nicholas II was the last Russian Tsar, and he was assassinated during a photo shoot of himself and his entire family in 1917. In 1915, my grandparents moved from Omaha, Nebraska to Tulsa, Oklahoma. So 2 years after they were becoming wealthy, Tsar Nicholas and his family, their last Russian Tsar, was put to death. The order of occurrences goes as follows. In 1898, the Russian government started taking over our grain mill and started to control my family business. My great-grandparents refused to cooperate, and they were imprisoned, where they died. My grandfather, Abraham Mizelovsky, then made his move to immigrate to the United States. When you show up at Ellis Island in 1900 and you're the most powerful family in Russia, Belarus means New Russia. The capital was Minsk, where my family was from. So when you show up at Ellis Island, then you're going to gather the attention of the U.S. government. So in 1900, we were settled not like the other immigrants in New York or Boston, not on the East Coast here. We were settled in Omaha, Nebraska, so we could be back in the Farm Belt. So my grandfather, Abe Mizelovsky, which became Abe Mizel, because my grandparents were illiterate and they didn't understand phonetics, and they thought that M-I-Z-E-L would be pronounced Mizel. So one half of my family pronounces their name Mizel. That would be my Uncle Morris and his family. And then my father, Sam, pronounces the name Mizell because his wife, my mother, Harriet, thought that that sounded classier and less guttural. So she was trying to class up the name, which made her unpopular with the other side of the family. Abe Meisel, as he called himself, started a grocery store in Omaha. And from 1902 until 1915, he operated a grocery store that was very successful. He proved himself to be a competent entrepreneur. He saved enough money to make an investment, and as he was looking around, the government decided to maintain our presence in Omaha by empowering kind of a guy that they looked upon as maybe a country bumpkin, but with big ideas about the securities industry, and his name was Warren Buffett. So they stayed connected to my family in Omaha through Warren Buffett, and then moved us to Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1915. Then once my family grocery business started becoming successful, and it looked like we were going to be successful entrepreneurs, then Tsar Nicholas and his family were obliterated 2 years later. That was the last Russian Tsar. So they kind of parked Russian intelligence married to American intelligence into my family. So my Uncle Morris was born in 1910. My father was born in 1912. And the intelligence agencies, which were really kind of disorganized and unnamed at that time, were managing my family. I don't know whether the name of our family business came from my grandfather or was suggested by the friends that we maintained in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that the government basically supplied. The United States government is aware of everybody's tax return. The U.S. government was prepared to, interested in, and committed to making my family extremely powerful by uniting capitalism and economic success with U.S. intelligence, which became a more formal proposal at that time. My father and my Uncle Morris, Sam and Morris Meisel, were living in an area of Tulsa where very modest homes like theirs shared neighborhoods with the most wealthy and powerful families in Tulsa. We were just, I believe, east of Peoria Avenue, kind of on the way to the Arkansas River. And so we were on the other side of Peoria Avenue, and then on one side was the park, which I believe was called Woodward Park, and then on the other side of Peoria was my family's home, a very modest home, and then the homes of the Wheatley family and the Sanderson family, and the wealthiest families in Tulsa were up the street and around the corner and in other areas, expanding all throughout Peoria to Lewis Avenue. So Peoria and Lewis Avenue were the two streets where all the moneyed people lived, and that would be my family and the other Jewish families in Tulsa. So in Tulsa we only had really two synagogues. One was called B'nai Amunah, which was the Orthodox synagogue, and the other synagogue was called Temple Israel, which was created much, much later in the late 50s. I studied at B'nai Amuna, but my mother wanted me to have a reform bar mitzvah. So when I was bar mitzvah in 1964 at Temple Israel, I had a reform bar mitzvah. Our Judaism was practiced in a very liberal manner that was made much more possible by a reform bar mitzvah, which was conducted by Rabbi Norbert Rosenthal. So, to give you an idea of how my family has been used in every conceivable way, the name Norbert is really non-existent. We cannot find anybody named Norbert. So Norbert Rosenthal conducted my bar mitzvah, and the only other Norbert was O.J. Simpson in the movie Naked Gun. He was Norbert. So if you believe in connecting personalities with feature films, it's an absolute certainty that the intelligence agencies were very much interested in Hollywood. America is the greatest film producing country the world has ever known. It's probably our most advanced business. And if you're going to be that advanced, where Thomas Edison, created the movie camera and all these geniuses, came from America, then you're going to have the intelligence agencies parked into those industries. And now this is a half an hour show, and I don't know exactly where we are in that half hour. I think we're 10 minutes in. So I think the best thing to say at this point, by the way, I don't do any drugs. I don't drink or do drugs or smoke pot or anything. So the only noxious chemicals that I consume are the sugar that's in my coffee. So I do caffeine and sugar, and that's all. So people that might want to say that I'm like hallucinating to come up with these ideas would be kind of like barking up the wrong tree. My father and my uncle were encouraged to go to a school that was really kind of out of their district. They went to Central High School. Sam Meisel and Morris Meisel attended Central High School. When my sister investigated our family business, it turned out that unlike every other family in Tulsa, because almost every Jewish family in Tulsa was in the oil business, either drillers or purchasers or suppliers. Really, we all had that in common, because there was a lot of wealth in Tulsa, and a lot of that Jewish wealth came from Tulsa. So that's my hometown, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Oklahoma means home of the red man in Cherokee. So because of the liberal kind of government they had, a boomer sooner, and Oklahoma was really a territory that was open to anybody that wanted to come, and then we were looking for settlers. So anybody that would want to come, to Oklahoma was welcome to come in. And so I'll tell you how that evolved as soon as I finished with the education of my father and my uncle. So they went to Central High School, and the name of our family business was not Meisel Oil, because all the other Jewish families, especially the wealthy ones, all of those businesses were named after the families. Sanatan Oil and just every other family were in the oil business and named after their family name. So my family business was called the Central Supply Company, later called the Central Oil Company. Now, how the word central and Meisel could be connected is a mystery to me. However, the National Security Act was passed in 1933, and from the National Security Act, we were all included. The families that the government was committed to supporting, primarily my family, were all part of the National Security Act of 1933. So in 1947, they formalized it all by creating the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA. So if my family was called the Central Supply Company or the Central Oil Company, and that was, in 1915, and then they named the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, we're pretty sure that came from my family. And so they were really very much committed to my family and conducted a lot of tests and parked a lot of programs inside my family business, combining U.S. intelligence with the oil industry, which is the largest industry in the entire world. And so if you look at leases that my father assigned to me back in 1979, the operators of my leases, Exxon, Mobil, Texaco, Shell, Conoco, Phillips, these are 6 of the 7 sisters that were created in 1915 in Beaumont, Texas, when they had the major strike, which gave rise to the 7 sisters, the 7 major oil companies. The 7th one was called Sinclair Oil, and that was Harry Sinclair, and my grandfather on my mother's side was Harry, named Harry. And I was born during the Truman administration, and that was Harry Truman. And so when your grandfather's name is Harry, this is on my mother's side, and Harry Truman is the president, and Harry Truman dropped the atomic bomb twice, so we were connected to all of that. When you incinerate that many brains and you explode a non-conventional weapon that had the power to destroy the entire world, you're going to attract something very heavy duty involving the year of your birth. And the year of my birth was May 27th, 1951. And to give you an idea of how I was looked at by our government, who has been monitoring my family since before I was even born, really, and looking for an opportunity to use us, because my Uncle Morris got started a couple years early, and my father got started 2 years later, and the way to diversify was through the other sides of the family. So my Uncle Morris married a woman whose family was all from Memphis, so that brought in Tennessee. And then I don't know where they originated from, but most likely Eastern Europe. My mother's mother was from Hungary, and my mother's father was from Poland. And so we were, all over Eastern Europe. So I am going to talk about what I know more than any human being in the history of this planet, and more than any life form in the entire universe. And I will take a sip of coffee after I give you the key element, which is I was born in 1951, and that transfers to Area 51 in Nevada, where all the information about UFOs is classified, investigated, and they tell you nothing about what really goes on, because everybody wants to have an edge, And if it's all happening in the United States, then people are very protective of that information and that knowledge. So I have expended 20 minutes, and now I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes telling you things that you couldn't find anywhere in any novel, any book, any scientific manual, because I'm the only one that knows this. And so that's why I want to remain as sheltered as possible. So I would like you to consider the following. We have extended our space program into the deepest part of known space. We talk about supernovas, we talk about neutrinos and the creation of neutron elements, neutron atoms. We are really advanced in terms of talking about the mechanics of the universe and science, the construction of atoms, the beginning of the physical world, the Big Bang. We are extremely knowledgeable about the universe, except for one thing. And this is what I want you to consider. And this is why I want to share this with an audience not composed of NASA or any government. There's no government official that is presiding over this, because I want this to be knowledge of the people. And I want to tell you things that if there are enough of you out there that are going to listen to this, some of you are going to see this connection, because this is how it really does work. Consider this. In the beginning, listen, in the beginning, God, listen, anything that begins with in the beginning can't start with something. In the beginning can't be God. In the beginning can't be anything other than nothing. The beginning. An empty glass is empty. An empty page of a book is empty. In the beginning, there's nothing. And I want to tell you the only thing that really does exist, and time created this. How much time? Who knows? Nothing existed. The universe didn't really exist. All that existed was time. And what time begat is really the only element that exists. Only one thing really does exist, and that is energy. Energy is all that exists. And so energy has different forms over time. In the beginning, there's nothing until nothing finally began to manifest itself. Nothing manifested itself in a fraction, I mean like a millionth of a second of a perception, a fragment of a thought, just a perception, an awareness that lasted almost like nothing. But if nothing exists, if there is nothing in existence, and for 1,000th of a second there's a moment of awareness and perception, then that's all that exists. 1,000th of a second in a universe of nothing can be perceived. So 1,000th of a second becomes 100th of a second, becomes a second. So a second is forever. A second is a century. When time doesn't exist, when matter doesn't exist, nothing exists. How much time have I got left? I've got 5 minutes left. Now listen carefully to this. We have all these descriptions of the universe, what happens, the rings of Saturn and all that. These are all physical descriptions. Okay? This is not what's going on. What's going on is dark matter. This is what thought is. The universe didn't start with matter. The universe started with thought. All this focusing on stars and collisions and supernovas, this is what happens in the physical world, but this has nothing to do with thought. The most advanced element that has ever come into existence is thought, the ability to think, and that took millions and millions of years before we got to the first thought. You take thought for granted. You're born with the ability to think. You have memory. You write down recipes. You remember to go to the dry cleaner. That is the most advanced thing that any life form in the universe can do. You know, when we have elements of the news like so-and-so gave a speech and so-and-so bought a dress and so-and-so's modeling, that's how we describe the universe. You know, the rings of Saturn are this, and the clothing of Naomi Campbell is this. But what's really going on is all in consciousness. Who's thinking what? What is a thought? That's what you need to be thinking. What is a thought? What else can think? There is no planet in the universe like the Earth. There is no life form in existence like a human being. You're the cream of the crop. You're what the entire universe is all about. A human brain is like nothing that exists anywhere, and there's very little competition. You know, most life in the universe is on moons because planets are far too violent. This is the only planet in the universe that has a life form like a human being, plus all the animals that are mammals, plus life beginning in the ocean, mammals starting in the ocean, coming on land in Ethiopia, evolving and spreading out. So not everybody in the world came from the Earth. So I'm going to finish with this. I got 3 minutes left. You can only know this from data being fed to you by entities that are part of your creation. Most thought in existence have been fragments of thought. Fragments of thought only recently have been connected to the final thoughts. Every thought now has its tail of thought fragments that created it. Ipso facto, I came from Saturn. Somebody who I don't want to mention is the last life form from Venus, which is a dead planet. Now it's all gas. Mars gave life to the Earth. Mars was like the Earth before an asteroid hit it. Asians, meaning Asians and Indians, came from Mars. I came from Saturn. Everybody else came from Earth. God did not create mankind. God created Asians and Hispanics from studying Indians from Mars and Africans from Earth. So I don't know how much time I have left, 2 minutes. So let me just tell you this. God is real. The universe didn't create itself, but you don't know what God is and what he's made out of, and the fact that it's not a he. I mean, you can't really, genders are only 1 million years old. I can tell you this for sure. Life began in the ocean. Mammals began in the ocean. They came on land in Ethiopia. Ocean water provides density. Thoughts must have density to hold them in. Therefore, life from the ocean comes on land in Africa. African people have thick hair and black skin because if you don't have something that will hold psychic energy into your skull and body, then you simply can't hold these thoughts in, and you can't spread throughout the rest of the continents that were all formed from volcanoes. Nothing existed on this planet except water. Mammals came from the ocean, and mankind came from Ethiopia. So African people that's original mankind. And thick hair is to hold psychic energy in their skulls, and black skin is to hold psychic energy in their bodies. And the reason for the superiority of African people in athletics and in so many areas is psychic energy. which is what almost all life is actually made out of. Dark matter is a form of psychic energy that has been given to us. Much of what happens in the universe is driven by psychic energy, and psychic energy is what your brain produces. Every thought in your head, every time you have a thought, you're emitting psychic energy, and that's what God is made out of, and all the creators of the universe. Everything is made out of psychic energy. So with that, I will conclude. I appreciate your attention, and I wish you good health, happiness, and goodbye.